All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. We're in tools and testing, understanding client-side JavaScript frameworks, and the getting started with React. And let me just mention, this section has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, I'm not going to cover the Ember or the Vue or the Svelte or the Angular. All right, so we're going to jump right from these down into the Git and GitHub and the cross-browser testing. All right, and then we will be jumping into the server-side stuff. So you'll notice that in here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections. I plan on doing this nice and deliberately, so if it seems slow, probably it's because it's slow. All right, so getting started with React. In this article, we say hello to React. We discover a bit of detail about its background and use cases, set up a basic React tool chain for our computer, and create and play with a simple starter app, learning about how React works in the process. All right. As its official tagline states, React is a library for building user interfaces. By itself, technically, it's not a framework. All right, it's used with other libraries to render certain environments. For instance, React Native can be used to build mobile apps, React 360 to build virtual reality apps, and there's other ones. To build for the web, we use React in tandem with React DOM. All right. It says we often refer to React as a framework we're working with for that understanding, even though it's really React DOM that we're using. The primary goal of React is to minimize the bugs that occur when developers are building user interfaces. It does this through the use of components. Notice that a component is defined here as a self-contained logical piece of code that describes a portion of a user interface, almost like a function. All right. These components can be composed together to create a full user interface, and React abstracts away much of the rendering work, leaving you to concentrate on the design. Unlike the other frameworks covered in this module, React does not enforce strict rules around code conventions or file organization. This allows teams to set their own conventions, all right, and use React the way they want to use it, okay? While React can be used for small pieces of an interface, it's not as easy to drop into an application like, for example, jQuery is, or even something like Vue. It says it is more approachable when you build your entire app with React, which is, I believe, what they're going to do, and which is what we will be doing sooner, if not later, in the AWD 11.1 database-driven web development class. This article is going to focus on the use case of using React to render an entire user interface of an application using tooling provided by Facebook's own Create React App tool. Again, if we open that, I'm going to remove a couple of these. There it is. All right. How does React use JavaScript? React utilizes features of modern JavaScript for many of its patterns. Its biggest departure from JavaScript comes with the use of the JSX, JavaScript and XML syntax. JSX extends JavaScript syntax so that HTML-like code can live alongside of it. It says, for example, it says this heading that's shown here is known as a JSX expression rather. You can use it to render an H1 tag in an app. Suppose, as mentioned there, we want to wrap our heading in a header tag. Why? For semantic purposes. The JSX allows us to nest elements inside of each other like we do with HTML. So here the H1 is nested inside of the header. It says the parentheses aren't unique here, and notice the ending semicolon to JSX, and don't have any effect on our application. They're a signal, all right, of where something starts and ends. It said you could just as well have done it like this, but you almost always see it done like this. Of course, the browser cannot read JSX without help. When compiled, the header expression will look like what is shown there. It is possible to skip the compilation step and use react.createElement to write the UI yourself. In doing this, basically, then why are you using JSX? Your code will become harder to read. Even though it's less code, it won't be as, I don't know what you'd call it, self-documenting or whatever. Compilation is an extra step in the development process, but many developers in the React community think the use of this is worthwhile. Plus, as mentioned, popular tooling makes the JSX to JavaScript compilation part of the setup process, so it's not something you really have to do yourself. Because of the fact that JSX is a blend of HTML and JavaScript, some people find it intuitive. Another reason for learning JavaScript and HTML before going into this. Others say that it makes it confusing. Once you're comfortable with it, hopefully it will allow you to build your interfaces quicker and more intuitively. All right, notice that there is another article in here, JSX in depth. All right. There are many ways to set up React, but we're going to use the command line interface or CLI tool, create React app, that was mentioned earlier. Notice this expedites the process of developing a React app by installing some packages and some files and some stuff for us. It is possible to add React to a website without this by copying script elements, etc., but using the Create React App CLI is a common starting point. All right. In order to use this, we need Node.js. I already showed you where that is. I've already got it on my machine. It's recommended that you use the long-term support version. So if you didn't see that previously, I'm going to take for granted you probably weren't paying that much attention to it because we didn't have to. But there's an LTS version and there's a current version. The advantage of using the current version, which we're not going to use, is it's got the latest and the greatest in it. The disadvantage is sometimes that stuff is in a beta test mode, which means it hasn't been added yet over here. Once something has been totally tested, it goes from current to LTS, which stands for long-term support mode. So Node includes NPM, which is the Node package manager, NPX, which is the package runner. It says you may also use the Yarn package manager as an alternative, but we'll assume you are using NPM, which we will be using. And there was a little of that earlier when we talked about the package management basics. All right, if you're using Windows, you'll need to install some software to give you parity with Unix, Mac, OS Terminal in order to be able to do this. I've already got Git on my system. In fact, again, if I right mouse click, you'll notice not on here, but if I right mouse click on here, one of the things that comes up with is Git bash here. You've seen that earlier. I showed you that. All right. So we've already got that loaded on the system is what I'm trying to get across to you. Also bear in mind that React and React DOM produce apps that only work on a fairly modern set of browsers, IE9 and above, all right, by the way of some polyfills. It is recommended that you use a modern browser like Firefox, Edge, Safari, or Chrome, and the most up-to-date version as possible. All right, so here are some more documentation that you might want to take a look at. All right, so Create React App takes one argument, the name we'd like to give our app. All right, and it uses this name to make a new directory. It creates the necessary files, and it makes sure that you CD to the place where you'd like your stuff to live. So it says here we're going to use this from our Git bash npx, which again is the runner. We're telling it to run create react app moz to do react, and that's what the name of this is going to be. So let's copy this. Let's come into here and let's paste it in. I'm not going to run it yet. All right. It says this is going to create that directory for us. Well, let's look first to make sure we don't have a directory called moz to do react. I know we don't, but just so you see it. If you look in here, in fact, if I bring up another instance of Git Bash, I'm at my desktop now. Oops, I don't want that. There we go. And I type in ls. There is nothing that's in here. Notice that it is in alphabetic order. So if I go down to the M's, I don't have one called Moz something or other. So it's not in there. All right. All right. So once we hit enter, which is what I'm about to do in a second, it should install some necessary Node Package Manager packages that we need for our app. It should write some beginning scripts. All right. It should create some file structure, and it should initialize the directory with a Git repository. Now it says if you have Yarn, we're not using Yarn. So let's just grab this and let's hit enter. And it's going through and it's doing some stuff for us automatically. There we go. Now, as it says, this might take a couple of minutes. I've always found it's more like about a minute. But again, it depends on the what you've got open, the traffic on the system you're using, etc. I know when I did this in spring of last semester and we went through an example, we did use this and it literally only took about a minute. So this looks like it's taking a little bit longer. We should notice when we get done that we'll have changed directories over to the moz-to-do-react, and it'll have a whole file structure set up for it already. And not all of it, but some of it will already have been created for us. And again, the idea behind this is understanding, not to see how fast we can rush through this. So even though it'll seem like I'm going through it very deliberately, it's only because I am. While this is finishing up, let's just go on here. It says create React app will display a number of messages to your terminal while it works. This is normal, so you've seen those. It might take a few minutes. When the process is complete, cd into, if it doesn't do it for you, into the moz-to-do-react directory and run the command npm start. All right, I'll show you what that does in just a minute. There we go. Just about finished here. So we had this, and then it's doing a bunch of installing stuff for us. All right. All right. It always comes up at the end and says happy hacking. We're still at the desktop, but now notice if I do an ls, I now have I should have in here, there it is, the moz-to-do-react. So if I do an ls -l under moz-to-do-react, and I hit enter, this is what's in there right now. A README file, a folder called node modules, a package lock JSON file, a package JSON file, a public folder, and a source folder. All right, I'm going to leave this open, and I also want to show you what this looks like in here. So let's get rid of that, throw that in here. All right, so this is what I just showed you. Again, there's a Git folder, a node modules, and what that did is it added a bunch of stuff from the Node Package Manager that we will potentially need for this project. We've also got in here a public folder, and you'll notice it's got an index file in it right now. Doesn't look like it's got much of anything in it. All right, get rid of that, and that, and that. So we've got that stuff in there. We've got a source, which is going to be, again, where we're going to be able to put some of our own code in. We've got a Git Ignore, and what the Git Ignore is it's a file in there that's got different files and or folders in it. And what those do is they list everything, because we've already got a Git repository set up that we don't need to add to the repository. They're more or less system files. We've got a package.json file that got created for us automatically. And this is one of the first things that we do in the AWD 1.1.1 class is we go through and we create this. And it's not a hard thing to do. You just run a command. And then you answer some questions. Here it just basically took, I believe, all of the defaults for us. And it's got a package lock.json file in it. All right. And it's got, again, some of the dependencies that we're using, where they are, etc. And you'll notice, not a small file. Over 16,000 lines. But it has to do with all of the Node Package Manager things that we brought in earlier. All right. Plus, we've got a README, which I think is just for historical purposes. All right. You might want to take a look at. All right. All right. As it says, when it's complete, run the command npm start. The script's installed. We'll start this at localhost 3000. So when we bring that up, we should have this. Now, you'll notice that when I ran it from the beginning, we're doing some server-side JavaScript here, so it didn't show on the client side. Nothing showed. But if I come into here and I type in, let's clear the screen here because I've already gone through this stuff. And let's type in npm, not npm, npm start. All right. Now it says error. So it's got something it doesn't like. It says a log of this can be found. Oh, because I didn't change. So let's clear and let's do a cd to my Moz dash to do dash, what was it, React? All right. Now, the reason that didn't work, and that's a good thing that it didn't work, is when I type an ls in here, it's looking for a file to run in here, and it didn't find one. All right. So I'm going to say npm start now, and notice it will work, but I think all that's going to happen in here is it's just going to give me my prompt. It's letting me know that it's starting. But I've told it then to go out to localhost 3000, and there it is. There's our first React. This is what you get out of the box. And don't worry, it's got a little animation in it, a React logo, etc. And it says that we can take this file, this app.js, and we can make changes to it. And just to show you real quick before we go on, I'm going to leave this up and running, but I'm going to grab that file, which is in source, and that's the app.js. I'm just going to come in here, and you'll notice it says edit this, save to reload. You see that? So I'm just going to add into this. In fact, we'll put it in as a new paragraph. And we'll put in a P, and we'll just put down, welcome to our first React app. Enjoy. And I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to come back. All right. And you'll notice that if I come back here and I refresh this, nothing happened. And it has to do with the way that I'm running Node right now. But to make it easier for you to understand, I have to stop this run. I can do a control break to stop it. And then I have to start the run up again with an npm start. Then when I go back in here, you'll notice we should have our message. There it is. Welcome to our first React app. Enjoy. All right. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be working on. Now, as far as the application structure, let me check my time here. I'm at 1947, so I'm going to stop right here, pick it up in the next iteration of this.